Imagine you are standing on the roof of Scotland, nearly 4,500 feet above the sea. Around you, the Cairngorm Mountains stretch out like a frozen sea of granite and scree, beautiful, desolate, and indifferent. The air is thin. The mist is a suffocating gray veil, and the only sound should be the whistle of the wind and the rhythmic crunch of your own boots on the stones. But then, you stop. You hold your breath, listening to the silence, and that's when you hear it. A heavy, resonant thud, one single, massive footfall that echoes through the fog, followed by another, then another. It isn't your echo. It's too slow, too heavy, and it's coming from right behind you. This is the terror of Ben Macdui, the highest peak in the Eastern Highlands. For centuries, the locals spoke in hushed tones of Am Fear Liath Mòr, the big gray man. But this is no mere campfire ghost story. The legend of the gray man is unique in the world of the unexplained because its witnesses aren't just dreamers or thrill seekers. They are scientists, soldiers, and some of the most respected mountaineers in history. They are men of logic who climbed into the mist and returned with a primal, bone-deep fear that defied everything they knew about the world. The mystery truly began to breathe in 1925, during a quiet meeting of the Cairngorm Club. Professor J. Norman Collie, a world-renowned chemist and an elite climber, stood before his peers and confessed a secret he had carried for 34 years. In 1891, while descending from the summit of Ben Macdui alone, he heard something in the mist. He described a rhythmic thump that occurred only once for every 3 or 4 of his own steps. At first, he tried to rationalize it as an echo, but the timing was wrong. Every time he stopped, the heavy footfalls behind him would continue for a moment before falling silent. Collie was a man of the laboratory, a man dedicated to the observable and the provable. Yet he admitted that in that moment, he was seized by a blind terror. He didn't just walk away, he ran. He stumbled down the mountainside for miles, gripped by the absolute certainty that something inhumanly large was stalking him through the fog. For over 3 decades, he kept this experience locked away, fearing that the scientific community would brand him a madman. But when he finally spoke, the silence was broken not by laughter, but by the quiet realization that he was not alone. Once the professor's account became public, the floodgates opened. Other reputable climbers began to share their own brushes with the presence. These weren't sightings of a monster in the traditional sense. They were encounters with a psychological force. They described an overwhelming atmosphere of malice, a pressure in the air that seemed to push them toward the edge of the plateau's sheer cliffs. Take the case of Alexander Tunian, a naturalist who walked the slopes during the height of the Second World War. In 1943, he found himself enveloped by the mountain's infamous har, the thick white mist that can turn a familiar path into a labyrinth. He saw a shape looming through the whiteout, a tall, gray figure that seemed to swallow the light around it. Tunian wasn't a man to be trifled with. He drew his service revolver and fired 3 shots into the entity. To his horror, the bullets seemed to have no effect, and the figure continued its steady, silent approach. Tunian fled, nearly plummeting to his death in his desperation to escape. 2 years later, Peter Densham, a member of the mountain rescue team, experienced the same crushing dread. While sitting near the summit, the mist rolled in with an unnatural speed. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by the sound of heavy footsteps. Densham felt a sudden, inexplicable urge to throw himself off the cliff face, a compulsion so strong he had to physically struggle against his own body to keep from jumping. This is the hallmark of the gray man. It doesn't just haunt the mountain, it invades the mind. What could cause such a profound reaction in men trained to survive in the harshest environments on Earth? Skeptics point to a phenomenon known as the Brocken Spectre. Under specific atmospheric conditions, a climber's shadow can be projected onto a bank of mist opposite the sun. The shadow appears unnaturally large, often surrounded by a circular rainbow known as a glory. It is a haunting sight, certainly, but it is an optical illusion. It cannot explain the sound. It cannot explain the rhythmic thud of feet that Professor Collie heard in the 1890s, nor can it explain the footsteps that continued after the witness had stopped moving. Others look to the very rocks themselves. Scientists have discovered that wind rushing through certain geological formations can create infrasound, sound waves that vibrate at a frequency below the range of human hearing. While we can't hear infrasound, we can feel it. Exposure to these low-frequency waves has been proven to trigger intense feelings of unease, sorrow, and even hallucinations. It can cause the liquid in the human eye to vibrate, creating gray shapes in the periphery of one's vision. Is Ben Macdui a massive natural instrument, playing a frequency of fear that drives men to the brink of insanity? And then there are the footsteps. Some believe the mountain's topography creates an acoustic illusion, where the sound of a climber's own steps is reflected back with a delay and a shifted pitch, making it sound like a giant is following behind. But even this feels like a fragile explanation when weighed against the sheer terror reported by those who have been there. Could there be something biological? A relic hominid, perhaps? A British cousin to the Yeti or Bigfoot? Evolved to survive in the high, cold plateaus where humans rarely venture? A 10-foot-tall creature covered in short gray hair would certainly match the few visual descriptions that exist. But perhaps the answer is more elusive. There is a concept known as the third man factor, a common hallucination experienced by those in extreme survival situations where they feel a comforting or guiding presence beside them. On Ben Macdui, however, the presence is never comforting. It is always malevolent. It is as if the mountain itself has a genius loci, a spirit of place that is ancient, territorial, and deeply hostile to the intrusion of man. Even today, when we have mapped every inch of the globe with satellites and GPS, the big gray man remains a shadow on the edge of our understanding. Climbers still report that sudden, chilling sensation of being watched. They still hear the footsteps in the mist. They still feel the urge to run, to flee from a predator they cannot see. Whether the Am Fear Liath Mòr is a trick of the light, a vibration in the air, or a physical titan of the highlands, the effect is the same. It is a reminder that there are still places in this world where human reason fails, where the modern mind is stripped away, leaving only the ancient, screaming instinct to survive. If you ever find yourself on the slopes of Ben Macdui and the mist begins to close in, pay close attention to the sound of your own feet, and if you hear a fourth step for every 3 of your own, don't look back, just run.